Hi, it's Daniel Burrus, and welcome to the fourth, what I call open webinar. I know we have quite a few new people. This has been huge. It's a very global audience, right from the first Friday that I did this. And I really welcome you all. And as you know, I'm not here to sell or promote anything. I'm really here for you, to try to help you rethink about the situation you're in and what's going on. And if you are just at home with kids, trying to deal with that. If you're unemployed, trying to deal with that. If you've had to lay people off, you're trying to deal with that. Or you're working like crazy, because some of us are doing more work right now. Think about all of the grocery stores and pharmacies and the paramedics and healthcare workers. So it's not like everything is shut down. And a couple of things from the previous programs that I did. And I want to kind of lead us off, because we have a lot of people that were not there before. We've got close to 1,000 again on this. So one of the things that I started out with is that there are future facts. I call those certainties. And that is the opposite of an uncertainty, which we're in right now. And of course, our theme for today is opposites. So in this case, one of the keys that I do know as a certainty is the pandemic will end. And one of the points I made in that first webinar is, what will you be remembered for during that time? By your family, by your friends, by your loved ones, by your employees, by your customers. You need to be thinking about that now, not wait until it's all over and then see what you can do. In other words, wait and see is not the place you want to be right now. You want to be taking action. By the way, that is another opposite. Which is our theme today. Actually, I've called it Go Opposite in the Face of Uncertainty. So they were framing up kind of what I'm talking about. And another thing that I talked about was significance over success in the last ones. And that is that we focus on our personal success, our organizational success, our business success, and that's all inwardly focused. But something that's far bigger and better, and the pandemic gives us an excuse to do it, which is an opposite, and that is to focus on significance. Because unlike success, significance is not focused on you and your organization and your personal career. It's focused on the things you do for others. And if you're elevating your personal and your organizational significance, success will follow rather than be the goal. And I'm so happy that so many of you have written me and let me know about how that inspired you to go and do significant things. I mean, my heart has been warmed with what you've been doing out there, and we'll talk about some of those examples in a few minutes. Something else that I talked about was we're supposed to be social distancing, and I don't want to be social distancing now. I want to be physically distancing, because we're social creatures. And we need socialization, but you don't have to be right next to someone to be able to reach out and touch someone in a significant way. And that's why I advised doing a FaceTime or a video chat, or maybe just picking up a phone and calling people that you know that you haven't talked to for a while. Call different people, connect with them, see how they're doing. And if you know some neighbors that are maybe older or more vulnerable, or people that you haven't talked to in a while, reach out. This is a good time to be more social and then physically distance. Let's talk about opposites and physical distance for just a minute, and now we'll get into some new thinking for you. So I've got a friend of mine that has been suffering from depression for a long time. And when this friend gets depressed, it gets down to suicidal levels, very severe depression. And, you know, where everyone, family and friends, is just worried about, you know, will he survive the next day? When do we drive him to a facility and just say, here, take him now. We don't want him to kill himself. I mean, it gets that bad. But there is a drug that he can take, and it doesn't let him get down in what he calls the rabbit hole. Because when, as in his words, when he gets in the rabbit hole, he gets so low, he can't dig out. So the drug doesn't let him go that low. I mean, he can have his ups and downs, but he's not going off a cliff. Now, here's how this relates to physical distancing and wearing masks and things like that. So he'll be doing and being quite normal, just normal self. And he might be taking that drug for a year or so, thinking that, hey, I'm okay now. So he thinks he's all right now. He's been okay for over a year, so he stops taking it. And what happens? Well, what happens is within 2 months, maybe 3, he's back down the rabbit hole, and all his friends are worried about him, thinking he's going to commit suicide again. As a matter of fact, most of his friends and family are saying, did he get off the drug again? He must have got off of that thing. Now, why did he get off? Because everything seemed fine. But the opposite was true. The opposite was true. Everything wasn't fine. It just seemed fine to him, and that's why he got off. Here's the relationship to that. When I first started this 4 weeks ago, one of the things that I said in the beginning was just 2 weeks ago, there were only 100 known cases of coronavirus in the entire United States. And I talked about the predictable growth of the virus being, we've known it since late February, that this spreads at an exponential level. 2 becomes 4 becomes 8, creates a graph that goes like that. It starts out slow and grows rapidly. And I talked about how that growth was very predictable, but that was a soft trend. Those of you that have read my materials and have done my learning systems know that I talk about hard trends that are based on future facts that will happen, and they can't be changed, and soft trends that are based on assumptions about the future, and they can be changed. So we know that the virus will grow exponentially, but we also know that's a soft trend. You can do something about it, and that is to mitigate it. In other words, social distancing, or what I'm calling separating physical distancing. And actually, this is not a new concept. We've known about it for a long time. When there is an outbreak of a disease in a country, usually it's not always the United States. It might be the Middle East, it might be Africa, it might be China, where their systems may not be as good, their health systems and protective systems. The regulations may not be as strong. That's why regulations can be a good thing. When that happens, we get an outbreak, and you contain that by something called quarantine. If the quarantine doesn't work and it gets out and it gets loose, or we don't quarantine and it gets bigger, that outbreak becomes a global outbreak, and that's what we call a pandemic. So this is a global pandemic, it's a global outbreak. And again, quarantine is the way to fix that. We've known that forever. We've known that since day one. So it works. Now here's the point I want to go with. Right now, things are leveling off. Things are starting to look good again. As a matter of fact, there are many states in the United States. Remember, this is a global audience I've got right now with you. We've got people from Africa, from China, from all over the world. But so in different places, when we start to see the curve coming down, because we have been physically distancing and we've been wearing masks and doing those things, we start thinking it's all okay. Or maybe you're in a place, now I'll pick the United States, where we haven't had much of an outbreak. And we think, well, there's not a problem there. But again, it's kind of like not taking the drug. If you get off the drug, you're going to be in trouble. MIT just put out a report, and they looked at that exponential predictable growth. They looked at what mitigation is doing on flattening the curve, and they said mathematically, and those of you who are with me on the first presentation that I gave 4 weeks ago know the math I gave you was correct for those that didn't mitigate. They said that we'd have about 1.7 million deaths by October in the United States. 1.7 million that we can confirm was from the coronavirus, if we wouldn't have mitigated. It's kind of like not taking the depression drug. All of a sudden, you're down the hole, and it's like, holy cow, what happened? I thought we were okay. What I'm getting at is we are going to have to phase this coming back. And we're going to do that. This is not, again, a light switch. That's been said by many, and I'm reconfirming that. And we're going to be using software. Some of you might know that Google and Apple are coming together to get their systems to talk to each other to help us to do some tracking. Although it'll be voluntary, you're going to want to volunteer, because you're going to want to know if you came within physical contact of someone who was infected, so that you can get tested. By the way, of certainty, we will be able to expand testing and get good testing. There's just a lot of testing we need to do, and it takes time to expand that, but that will happen, and it is another key to being able to open up and free us and get us back to where we were. And that is something else that I talked about in one of my programs. It's an opposite. In other words, we're not going back. You can never go back. You can only go forward. So for those of you, last time I had a speaker, professional speaker. I do a lot of speaking, I think you know, even over 3,000 of them, so I guess so. And there's a lot of people, in this case, a person who asked a question last week, who said, what about speaking? And what we're doing is trying to get back to speaking exactly like we did before, instead of seeing the opportunity of doing the opposite and saying, let's relook at what I was trying to do in my speech. And is there something that I could be doing before they get in the room, which, by the way, I've been doing for quite a while. Is there something different I could do during the speech? Is there something that I could do after the speech? By the way, I've been doing that for quite a while. In other words, can we dimensionalize and create more of a flow than an event, than a single event? In other words, rethink the process. So what about a sales? Or what about some other business that you're in? Can you rethink? In the very first program that I did a month ago, I gave you an opposite. And again, many of you weren't there. I talked about convenience stores, and they were all going to be shutting down. And I was talking, and I was actually doing an interview that was going to go out to the owners of all these convenience stores. And they were looking at, people aren't coming in for gas. They're not coming here. We're having to lay people off. And I said, no, you need to be hiring people. You need to do the opposite. Don't be a convenience store, be a necessity store. You've got Uber and Lyft drivers that aren't taking people to restaurants and bars. They can deliver for you. And it's not just to your current customers, but to new customers, maybe nursing homes. Change your product mix a little bit. Have a little more extra strength Tylenol and fresh food, and maybe a little less cigarettes and things like that. By the way, since that 4 weeks ago, there are convenience stores that are becoming necessity stores and doing just that, and hiring. Why? Because they listened, they realized, whoa, the opposite does work better. On my second one, I gave an example of a chain of dry cleaners that was 90% down. People aren't getting everything pressed and cleaned anymore. And they were about to lay off. And I said, no, you gotta be hiring. Why? Because there are grocery store workers, and there are people working in pharmacies that are getting exposed every day. They should be getting their clothes washed every day. And by the way, all the pharmacies and grocery stores are making a lot more money. That's why they're hiring. So what do we do with some of that money? Make sure our workers are healthy and they're willing to spend on that. So why don't you start doing daily cleaning of all those workers' clothes? That's a huge market. And I mentioned some other ones. I'm not going to repeat myself because some of you were there. I just want to help you to see opposites work better. So you might think, well, I've got to hunker down. I got to conserve cash. I've got to just kind of hang in there. And as you can see, I want us to do the opposite and reimagine, rethink what and where we're going and what we can do through the phases of unlocking and not getting to the past, but getting to a better future. How do we make the future better than the past? Really, what I've been talking about for quite a few years, and I'll talk about it right now, is I would like us to be positive disruptors, creating the transformations that need to happen, because perfection is impossible. Everything can be better. You weren't perfect before in what you did. As a matter of fact, one of the things that is interesting is that when you've been in a career for a while and you're really good, you start coasting. It's amazing how many people are kind of coasting through and doing well and making money and making payments and all that. Just remember, you can only coast downhill. At some point, gravity does take over. I think now is the time to not be coasting. We need your A game. When I say who is we that needs your A game, your family, your friends, your relatives, all of the relatives that aren't blood relatives, which may be everybody on the planet, since we're all connected more than we realize. Your customers, your future customers who don't even know about you yet, but may discover you in a whole new way. Now is not the time to sit back and worry. Now is the time to move out and do something. You know, we are facing a lot of emotions with this. big emotions. And we've got fear. Who hasn't had fear about this? We have got anxiety. If you looked at your retirement portfolio, if you have one, you're going, whoa, holy cow. And by the way, if you don't have one, you're going, really, holy cow, because I can't even afford anything. We've got isolation, because we're isolated from our friends. We can't go into the restaurants and the bars and do all that. As a matter of fact, when you watch the commercials on television, you're seeing people doing things together that we can't even do today, which is pretty interesting and causing some mixed emotions during those very commercials, something to think about if you're running commercials right now. So I've got a special guest I'm bringing into this one I haven't done before. And this special guest is an amazing human being. I've known him for over 30 years. And we're not going to spend much time with him. Actually, I'm going to do a longer interview of him. We'll tell you about later. But his name is Charlie Plumb. And there he is. Hi, Charlie. And Charlie was a prisoner of war for, let me get the number of days right, in Vietnam for 2,103 days. And now think about that a second. It wasn't a month. It wasn't since February. It was almost 6 years. And by the way, it wasn't the Ritz-Carlton. There was no Netflix, no food delivery. By the way, there was no toilet paper, for those of you that got a little anxiety about that. Couldn't walk outside and wear a mask. I mean, heck, it would have been great if you would have been able to walk outside and wear a mask. I know that for a fact. And there was no one else in the room with you. You were alone. You were alone, but maybe you weren't alone. We'll get back to that in a second. And you were physically in distance from everybody except the guard and the beatings that you would get. And the only news you got was slipped under your door once a week, and it was communist propaganda. So talk about the extreme of what we're feeling. I would like you to do a little bit of an opposite and sit back and realize how grateful you should be by hearing a little bit of Charlie. So Charlie, first of all, I remember talking to you and you said there were 591 prisoners like yourself that got back. And I can tell people in this listening, I've known him, he is an amazing human being. He didn't shrink down from almost 6 years of that. He grew as a human being. He grew. And by the way, tell me a little bit about some of those other ones. I mean, you know, they didn't all just kind of get down and stay down. Things happen. Tell me about that.
Yeah, pretty unbelievable. What happened? 591 of us came home, and they thought we'd be in baskets after an experience like that. You know, they thought we'd be vegetables. They had our families briefed to institutionalize us for the rest of our lives. So from 591 men, we produced 17 generals in the military, 7 admirals, a bunch of congressmen, 2 United States senators, 2 ambassadors, a vice presidential candidate, a presidential candidate, and they're telling us today we're healthier mentally and physically than if we hadn't been shot down. So
wait, let me just stop right there.
All right.
Listen to what he just said. You can fall down, hunker down, get bummed out and do nothing, or you can grow. I mean, and by the way, I know many that didn't make that little list. I've been fortunate enough to know some other ones, Jerry Coffey and a few others, who are amazing human beings that are doing amazing things. So what was it that helped you to do that? I mean, how did you get to that?
Yeah, and I love your theme of go opposite, because that's pretty much what you have to do. The human tendency in a situation like that is crawl over in the corner of your prison cell, assume the fetal position, and give up. And it was really tough. It was tough to fight that. It was tough to go opposite. I remember the first time I had the opportunity to communicate with another fighter pilot, because we were nearly all fighter pilots in that prison camp. The first time I had the opportunity, I didn't want to. I backed away because I didn't want to expose the fact that I had failed in my mission so miserably. And I'm thinking the guy has to be bigger than I am, tougher than I am, a better pilot, older. And so it took me hours really to drum up the courage just to communicate with another guy. Well, that communication turned out to be a lifesaver, because he connected me with the net, and of all the other prisoners in that camp, varying camps, but 200 or 300 guys that were my support group. And what a support group I had over there. You know, even though we couldn't see each other, we couldn't talk to each other, you know, we couldn't shake hands with each other, but we were all isolated, but we were all in the same shape. And
I remember, I seem to remember, Charlie, didn't you communicated by tapping code on the doors, and that's how you communicated. Again, you couldn't even have a conversation. You were tapping on the wall. Isn't that correct?
That's right. That's right. It was a very cumbersome code where different combinations of numbers would be various letters of the alphabet, and it was very slow. Took a lot of time, but then that's all we had was time.
Well, what else did you do at that time? I mean, you had no Netflix. I mean, what did you do? How did you not just go crazy in a room with nothing?
Good question. First of all, I started back through my history, tried to remember every book I'd ever read, every movie I'd ever seen, every girl I'd ever dated. Now that was fun. And that took I was 24 when I was shot down, and that took about 3 months to exhaust all of my memory and put that in kind of a diary of myself. Then I went forward and planned the next 20 years around my wife and the life that I would lead after I returned. And then when I wasn't repatriated, I tried again. I went through a different method and assumed different things. And so planning the future, I think, while we're in this pandemic, as you mentioned in your opener, is a great idea.
Let me just ask you this. Again, another good friend and mutual friend of ours, Jerry Coffey. I remember asking, because he was, I think, one of the longest held prisoners, and I remember asking Jerry, I said, Jerry, I know some guys didn't make it through. And he said, yep, there were some guys that didn't make it through. And I said, Jerry, you know, what was the difference between the people that made it and the people that didn't make it? And he said, the people that didn't make it always said, I can't handle it. I can't make it. I'm not going to make this. And he said, all of the people that made it knew they were going to make it and did exactly what you said. They had a future view and saw it and made it visible in their mind. And they knew they were going to get out of there. And by goodness, they did. Would that kind of fits what you were thinking?
Absolutely. I was next door to Jerry Coffey for about a year, as a matter of fact.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah. I'll tell you some stories sometimes over a beer.
I want to hear those another time.
But, you know, we used to call it prison thinking, you know, that the actual restriction was not the 8 feet between the walls. It was 8 inches between our ears. And this was going to be a mental game. And so the guys, we lost about 29 guys that we know of there. And they have suffered from this mental box that they were in, not, you know, not doing the opposite, not getting out of themselves and establishing communication and finding the support group.
Wow. I want everyone to really hear what he just said and really let that sink in, because that's why I've been here for you. I think it's all about what's going on in here. And, you know, and we can have it take us down that rabbit hole, as my friend would say, and get more and more depressed and more bummed out and get hopeless. Or we can do the opposite and find hope in a vision for ourselves and seeing ourselves not just surviving this. You're thinking too small. You need to do the opposite. How are you going to thrive getting out of here? How can this make you better? Frankly, I'm going to make a suggestion. You were all coasting. I'm going to make a suggestion. I was coasting. And let's not, we need our A games. We need to step up to the plate. And by the way, if you're really depressed and you're really sad or you're really in fear right now, let me give you a quick suggestion. Help others. Go and help others. Because if you're in service to others, you'll find yourself in a significant role and it'll elevate you. So if you're in that right now, or you know someone that is, suggest that. And by the way, you don't have to go somewhere. You can pick up the phone. Charlie, I want to have time to make a few more points, and I definitely want a chance for people to ask questions and after this. And I would love for you to kind of stay available so that if someone has a question they'd like to ask you, we could indeed do that. And let me see if there's, is there anything else before you and I leave. And by the way, we will let everyone know, because I don't know exactly when we're going to get the longer version of Jerry and I. I think it might be next week sometime, but we'll let you all know when that is, because we're going to get into some other really good elements of this that I know it's a rich story. But anything else that you would like them, that would be helpful for them to get through this, thinking that we've got business owners that had to lay people off. We've got parents that are working but now have kids at home. We've got people that can't even feed their kids. We've got all sorts of issues going on. What would help them?
I think you've hit it right on the head. You know, communicate, get outside yourself. See this as an opportunity. I've always believed that adversity is a horrible thing to waste. And we would waste this opportunity if we don't take a risk, you know, kick down what's left of your comfort zone, and get outside yourself and serve. What a great point. You know, serve other people, and you serve yourself by doing so. So finally, Dan, I want to thank you, on behalf of everybody who's watching this, the millions of fans that you have, sharing your wisdom. You know, you're not advertising anything. You're not trying to sell anything. You're trying to help other people, and we appreciate it.
Well, thank you, Charlie. And again, thank you very much. And I'm going to ask you to turn your video and mute yourself right now so we can get back to what I was doing. But again, he's got so much wisdom to share, and I'm going to pull that wisdom out of him and apply it to your life, to business, and I'll let you know. I hope you catch that. Okay, let's talk about a couple of things I want to share with you real quickly from an opportunity standpoint, just to kind of stir your thinking. You can time travel on the planet. And again, those of you that have read my books and know my material, doing time travel is one of the things that I talk about. You can go along the Amazon right now and be with people as if it was 1,000 years ago. They got blowguns and spears. You can go into some remote villages in China or Africa and go back 100 years. You can go into some businesses today and be time traveling. You can talk to someone and be time traveling. So it's about mindset. It's about what they have and the tools they're using, and so on. It's about how they're thinking about their world. So if you can time travel back, you can time travel forward. Maybe you've talked to someone that is working with AI and doing things with robotics that you never even thought possible. Well, they're in the future. They're a little ahead of you in time. So here's the reason I'm bringing that up. The coronavirus is not affecting everyone at the same moment in time. As you know, it broke out in China. And then it was in Singapore and South Korea and North Korea. We don't have a lot of data on that. And other places before getting here. In other words, it was there to see, and we can learn from that. By the way, it's going places from here. It's starting to break out in India. It's going to be breaking out in Africa. It hasn't hit there real hard yet. In other words, what do I like about the past? We can learn from it. It's already happened there. What can we see? What can we learn? What about the future? Well, maybe we could keep them from having the bigger problem that they had, which is an opposite, by sharing that knowledge ahead of time and let them know what we know works and make sure that we put some networks in place. So based on that time travel, let's do a little bit. Think opportunity in your mind now. China and Japan. They did a big survey. This is a recent survey. 3 out of 4 people in China and Japan now say they want to boost their immunity and make that something they will do going forward, because now they know how important it is to have a good immunity system. Remember, I talked about that on my first webinar, and I think the one last week, which is a really good diet, exercise, and it is sleep. Those are the 3 keys. And so what they want to do is boost immunity. And they have said specifically their 2 biggest things is better food and more exercise. Notice better food. See, all of us have a different view of what we eat and what is good for us. We all would vary in our opinions on that. But the reality is I'd like you to err on the good side of that, at least for now, and then consider maybe some even healthier alternatives. But again, let's get back to opportunity. So better food, more exercise. You know what? I think we're going to have that here. I think that's an opportunity is a change of preferences. By the way, there's something else here. Strong preferences for local brands versus international brands. Got to tell you, I just got some new lights that I think are working better than my lights before. And when I opened the box, it was, they were all made in China. Now, again, got nothing against the Chinese, love the Chinese. As a matter of fact, I love all my brothers and sisters on the entire planet. We're all connected. That's how I see things. That's my worldview. And, but I know that there might have, I don't know who touched that box. So I had to wipe things down. I had to wipe it up. Did I not want to use it? Did I want to return it? No, it's good stuff. I just want to be extra safe because I know that virus can stay active for a while. Maybe I was a little bit too paranoid on that, but I've got to just tell you my visceral reaction when I saw where it was from. So it means what? There's some opportunity for growing businesses and doing things in your country, whether it's the United States or anywhere else, that is going to last for a while. Because remember, the virus isn't just going to be gone, it's with us. We're going to learn how to contain it better, get our healthcare systems, be able to track it better, get some immunizations against it. That's a little farther down the road. And as I talked about on the nearer term, the game changer, which isn't totally there yet, but it will, is a combination of drugs that already work with humans, and that combination will lower the symptoms so we can get rid of the ventilator and lethality of it and get it to a bad flu. That will be a game changer. I believe we will get there, but it's not fast because anyone that's got a relative that is taking multiple drugs for, let's say, diabetes and high blood pressure, and they got a bunch of things they're taking, you got to get just the right combination or they can end up in the hospital. So that's why we can't just say, put these two together and it should work. No, we got to test this stuff or it can be worse. Matter of fact, I just read about Tom Hanks' wife took a drug and it helped, she thinks, and they think it helped lower the symptoms, but now afterwards, she's dealing with all of the side effects of the drugs, which are very, very big. So that's why we're not real fast, but that's coming. How about this one? Opportunity for grocery stores to get and develop their digital and their e-commerce end. So now we've got grocery stores and drugstores, and we've got people that come in, but now we got a good excuse to also have home delivery and to get better at that afterwards. What is another opportunity that I see? Big one right now, and that is self-checkout. Because the grocery store, the pharmacy, and other retail outlets as we open up, we are going to be a little fearful for a while. And we can ease that fear if you don't have to, check out with another human. You can check out by yourself, do self-checkout. That's going to be growing and big. There's an opportunity there to grow that. Does that mean we'll never need store clerks and people again? And the answer is, well, no. Now they can actually serve customers, help you find things in the store, or help to see if there's some in the back. Otherwise, they're too busy. You never get to see them. There is, how about this as an opportunity? Who wants to deal with cash anymore? I don't want to touch a bill. I don't want to get change back. I'm going to have to wipe all that change down. I got to put it in my purse or in my wallet. In my case, now I've contaminated the wallet. What about a credit card? You got to pull that out. You got to stick it in a machine. You got to touch it. Other people may take it. You hand it to them. What am I getting at? Big opportunity to grow something that's actually more secure, and that is using your smartphone with biometrics. That's actually, I'm not going to get into why, but far more secure. Anyway, there's an opportunity to grow that. And by the way, if you're not doing that, you should start doing that. I would like us to be looking for the opportunities. How about a few here? Apple, I mentioned Apple and Google already. David's Bridal has teamed with Jones stores around the country. They're making 50,000 non-surgical masks right now that they're going to give away. They're putting it out in over 258 stores. That's where they're doing this, the sewing and doing it. In Boston, they're actually putting more medical grade to that and getting it to their healthcare workers and families. Excuse me, would help to get a drink of water. Oh, another one. Optimus Ride. I like this. This is a autonomous vehicle manufacturer, and that have test vehicles in different parts of the country and very low. They're not doing much with them. What are they doing? They're implementing them now in communities that have seniors. So what are they doing it for? To deliver their meals at night. So they got an autonomous vehicle that can come over, deliver the meal, and you take the meal in, and then it goes and drops off the next meal and the next meal, and you just come and collect it and go. They're using in Boston those autonomous vehicles to get healthcare workers transported because healthcare workers are probably more likely to have maybe an issue versus somebody else. So why not put them all together? Maybe healthcare workers want to stay healthy and don't want to be with other people. Well, we can contain them and not even have a physical driver driving them. So there's some opportunities for technologies like that. We're loaded with opportunities all over the place. We are at a point where I'm going to take question and answer. And if you have one for Charlie, I'll ask him to come back on. But for right now, it's open to anything that you would like. I would like you all to know that I have been in the process of answering all your unanswered questions. Luckily, those of you, even going back to the very first one that asked me questions, there were many. There were hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of great questions, and I've been going through them. Again, I can't just sit down and devote hours in a row to do it, but I've been doing it. I've been answering them. Many of you know that, and I will answer them all. So if there are questions we don't get to in this, please know that I will get to you, and you can write them down and submit them, and I'll do it. And I know some of you might have to go at the top of the hour, but let me just let you know two things very quickly, because I'm going to go beyond the top of the hour, because we can learn from each other, not only in the questions and insights that are shared from your questions, but again, in the answers that I provide. That's part of why we're here. But in case if you have to leave early, we've created a page that, again, isn't about advertising. It's Burrus, BURRUS.com/hope, HOPE. And on that site, you can find the previous webinars that I've done, if you'd like to take a look at them, if you didn't see them. I've got some resources on there that you can have. Again, I'm not selling anything on there. I'm giving you things away. And that is also where you can register for next week's webinar. I said I would do them throughout the month. And so that I think might be the last one that I committed to doing. And that one, I'm calling it significance, align your significance and success around your future view. So it's an aligned future view in the face of uncertainty. And by the way, didn't Charlie just talk about future view? It was his future view that helped him get out of there. We're going to spend a little bit more time on the power of future view and the next one. So don't forget to register. Okay, Jennifer, boy, thank you, Jennifer Metcalf, for all of your work and putting this all together. She is the most amazing person I think I've ever met. Holy cow. Jennifer, can you help with questions? Let's do it.
Thank you, Dan. I would love to. So I have quite a few questions stacked in the Q&A, a lot for you, Dan, and a lot for Charlie as well. So
good. I'm glad we got for both of us.
Yeah, I'll let you direct me as to when you want to bring him back, but we'll start with a question for you from Michael True. He says, thank you. I help the higher education market, specifically experiential learning like internships. Higher ed is facing declining enrollments. Student retention will most likely drop as well. How can we go opposite given these situations?
Yes, I've done a lot of work with higher ed. I'm on an advisory board of a couple of universities, and so I have some understanding of that. And what I would suggest is, as I did earlier, this is the time to look at, were we just coasting before? By the way, we were all coasting, including higher ed, including lower ed. We were all coasting. Now is our time to us to think, look, we're at a moment in time. This is the opportunity that we don't want to waste right now, that the pandemic has brought to all of us. And that is to step back and rethink what we do and how we do it. And is there a way that we can elevate the significance of what we do? You know, I want to I want to become indispensable. So I would like, how could, here's the question for you, what would higher ed need to do to be indispensable to their students currently and to future students? Indispensable. What would make you, here's another question for you. By the way, you could apply this to any business that's in this room and any individual. What would it take for you to be increasingly relevant in a world of transformational exponential change? And I think you'll come up with some answers. Now, here's to get more specific to help you with an answer. Right now, we're doing a lot of online. And by the way, we're fumbling with it. We're not doing that great with it. We're not coming up with our A game. We're just trying to survive and help our students graduate right now. But we're learning and we're starting to see what works and what doesn't work. By the way, we should be learning from each other. Right now, we're just learning by ourselves. But if knowledge increases in value when it's shared, so what if we were learning from each other? That would be really powerful, meaning university to university to university, elementary school to elementary school to elementary school. Much better. Anyway, I would like you to step back and look at, we're going to be both and, because remember I talked about, and in my writings over the decades, I've talked about the fact that the future isn't this or this, it isn't classroom or virtual, it's both. As a matter of fact, I'm just recalling one of my first speeches in 1983. I said that in the future, we will automate and humanize education for the first time in history. Let me just tell you what I meant by that, because I explained it in my speech, but I'll give it to you very quick. And that is, we think automation and humanization are opposites, but they don't have to be. The key is, how do you integrate the two to make the integration more powerful than either of the two separate would have been? So in this case, with education, try to teach a kid how to multiply. Well, that's not fit for a human. Yeah, that should have been on an automated, interactive, game-like system that's competitive and fun. And now that they know how to multiply, now that they know math, what does the human teacher do? Well, now the humanization part comes in. Maybe we can teach them how to balance a budget and get them employed in the federal government. Yeah, anyway, that's another story. What about teaching a kid what an adverb is? Well, that's not fit for a human. That should be done on an interactive game-like cool system. What does a human teacher do? Now that they know how to write, now that they know the parts of speech, the human teacher can help them write something that you would want to read. You see, I think we've been dealing with the lower ends of the cognitive domain in higher education and lower education, and we've been stuck there. That's the part to automate. I want the humans to do what they do best, the higher levels of the cognitive domain. Analysis, problem solving, synthesis, creativity, all those wonderful things. I gave you a long answer, but actually that answer I knew would apply to, frankly, all of us out there. Okay, let's do another one.
Question from Ray Simpson. What do you think will happen with restaurants?
All right, good question. I know right now restaurants are dealing with insurance issues. There's some lawsuits going because many of them have business interruption insurance, and the insurance companies aren't wanting to pay. And so there's that debate going on right now. And if you read the fine print of many of those, it does include the word virus, so they probably will end up having to pay. And by the way, they could, it just would be painful. But let's get to what your question might really be about. First of all, check and see if you got that policy. And if you do, there may be some interruption insurance that'll help you out. Secondly, smaller restaurants, single shop restaurants, small ones, people are going to need to eat. People are going to want to go to restaurants. We're social beings. We're going to be slow to trust it. So what restaurant, when we open up, will we trust? What is the key to retail going forward? What's the key to getting people to go and to sporting events? And that is a special cleanliness. In other words, that we have disinfected, we do things that we've never done before, and it's part of our new normal. is that we're ultimately clean. As a matter of fact, there's going to be some new standards and some new certifications on buildings. And just like they would check at a restaurant to see if you had bugs and things like that, they're going to check in a whole new level for viruses and everything else so that you're certified clean. That way I can trust going in. See, by the way, that's another huge opportunity. There's a whole industry that could be created around that. Maybe your restaurant will be thinking about how can I be a lead in that. Also, again, immune system. Take a look at your mix of food. Is it healthy? Is it good for the immune system? Is it not? You might have a different mix. Some restaurant owners and some businesses will not survive this. They were not capitalized well. They were living hand to mouth. They weren't doing that well. They may not survive this at all. However, those people that were doing it hopefully are not going to shrink down, but learn from it by asking the question, why was I in this survival mode? Why was I not having the ability to make enough money to weather a storm? What would I have done different if I would have thought about this ahead of time, which now you have time to do, so that you can start a new restaurant under a new name, maybe in the old location, or maybe with the old name, but come back stronger. Think it through. My biggest thing is we're going to want to go to restaurants, just like we're going to want to go to bars, just like we're going to want to go to all the other places that we want to. We're human beings, and those needs will be there. How do we get them there? Those are the opportunities, like I mentioned. Okay, there's a lot of answer to that, and there's probably a lot more. Happy to help you with that. Okay, another one.
Question from Dan Erler. Can you talk a little more about setting up an anticipatory organization command center and how to respond to those who are being very negative and in various states of denial?
Yeah, thank you. There are people that will be in various states of denial, and there were people, there's an old thing, as you know, I taught biology and physics in the beginning of my career, so I'm a teacher at heart. I guess that's what I was put on the planet to do. And there's a bell-shaped curve. And there are people that are already there. There are people that will never get there. And then there's the big mass of us in the middle. And what we want to do is move it over, move the middle over, because there are some that will never get there. There are people that I've met, and I've had friends have met them, that believe the earth is flat. And they will argue the earth is flat, and they've got the conspiracy theories and everything down, and the earth is flat. And you're not going to change some people's the way they think. Scientists have been trying to do that with a lot of subjects, including the effects of climate change and so on. And there are people that will just say, hey, the world is flat, or, you know, there is no problem, even though we can see the problem in the facts represented. So I would say, first of all, you're not going to get everyone. What you got to do is get the bell-shaped curve to move. That's the key. There's some that will never get there. However, the best way to get the curve to move is using what I call the hard trend methodology. And again, I'm not here to teach you all my principles. I can do that. You know, I've got learning systems and books for that. You can find that on your own. But basically, as I think Dan has already taken the course, so he knows there are hard trends based on future facts. And they are undeniable truths. They will happen. You can't stop them. There's some categories for them, but you know, it works. And that gives you certainty. And you know, when you have certainty, it's hard not to have the confidence to move forward in a bold way. So the key is focusing on that. So your team that's going to be focused on shaping the future, that is going to be really using and identifying the hard trends that relate to your organization, that relate to your customers, relate to where you're trying to go and what you're trying to do, and use those certainties to step back and reinvent yourself with low risk, because you know that transformation is going to happen anyway. Every disruption that's ever disrupted was there to see, including, by the way, this pandemic. We'll talk about that in a second. I think I will bring that up in a minute of how that was there to see. And use the power of certainty. I call it the science of certainty, because when you're uncertain, you don't make bold moves. When you're uncertain, you wait and see. When you're certain, you will move forward, because you have confidence. So rally around those hard trends and then use future facts. And the other one is in communications. Don't talk so much about if this and if that. If you've got a certainty, a future fact, you can talk about we will. You know, we're still going to have old people. They're not all going to die from this. And by the way, we can predict a lot of their needs and we can do a lot. Matter of fact, isn't it pretty easy right now? If those of you that read my book, Flash Foresight, one of the things I talked about is with 78 million baby boomers in the United States, if we go out far enough, there are not going to be enough cemeteries. We're going to have to be thinking about something else, or maybe that's a new investment. Of course, that's accelerated a little bit right now, where we're burying people in parks and things like that. Other parts of the world, they're doing cremation much more heavily. We may be thinking about that a little bit more. It's again, taking that time to think about it. So Dan, I know that, remember, I will answer questions via email. I can't get them out real fast because I'm spending a lot of time helping people every day, but I will. But let me talk about something I just brought a subject up on, and that's the pandemic and why we couldn't see it, or could we? There's an event called a Black Swan. Maybe you've heard about this. This event is called the Black Swan, meaning it came out of nowhere, you couldn't see it coming, and it changes everything. And every now and then you have black swans. Sometimes people have referred to not just a medical or a healthcare pandemic type thing or an outbreak, but maybe it's a disruptive technology. Maybe, you know, like for example, Amazon might have been considered a black swan event, because all of a sudden Amazon came along and changed everything back in the early 90s. But here's what I'd like you to do to understand how to see a black swan and why this methodology that I teach is so important. And because I'm a teacher, I'm here to help you to do it. So imagine right now with me that you're at a lake. You're standing at the shore of a lake, and it's a pretty good sized lake. And in that bigger lake, you've got ducks, you've got geese, you've got swans, and you've got a number of different types of waterfowl in that lake. And off on the far shore, a black swan emerges. Most people aren't going to see that. They're not looking at the far shore. It's there to see. They weren't looking. They were looking at the near shore. They were looking at the birds that the ducks that the little kid is feeding. They were looking at that really cool swan right over there. They were looking close by. Most people aren't looking at the future that much. They think they can't see anything in the future. They think the future is unpredictable. And of course, I've spent 36 years showing, it's actually a lot of it, not all of it, is quite predictable, including the black swans. So out in the distance, it's there. If you take the time to look, because I know we got to hunker down, we got to execute, we got to do our thing, we got to run our business, we got to run our career, but you better look up more often. Why? Because technology, as well as the virus, is changing things at an exponential level, and you'll never get ahead of it if you aren't looking. So let me just ask you a question. You're at that lake, all right? And off in the distance, that black swan is swimming towards you, way off in the distance. Can you predict that it will get to you at some point? Answer is yes. Can you see how fast it's going? Actually, yes. Can you predict when it will get real close to you? Actually, you can. It can change direction, but you can see that too. The pandemic was the same thing. We could see it coming when it broke out. When China locked down millions of people, and that was way before we did anything here in the US. When they locked down millions of people, you don't lock down millions of people in a country as big as China just for the heck of it. That's fear, that's worry, that's an outbreak. That is something, a big deal. We should be learning from that. We should be seeing what's going on over there. And then when Korea is doing that and Singapore is doing that, we should be paying attention to that. That black swan was right there swimming our direction. But we waited until it was close to our shore. As a matter of fact, some of us are still kind of questioning, is there even a black swan there? But let me just address that. I have somebody I heard about last week that lost a 26-year-old healthy daughter to the virus. This isn't just old people. It can affect all of us. It is no joke. So the black swans are there to see. And I've had the pleasure of speaking to, over the last 20 years, a number of times, to international conferences of people that deal with viruses and bacteria and outbreaks with all the doctors, thousands of them at a time. And I've gone back a number of times, as well as I've done work with drug companies and others as a consultant. And I know that the pandemics and something getting out was something that we knew it would happen, we just didn't know the when. And you can get prepared for that or not. And that's why we need to be prepared. Now, here's the good news. We will be prepared more for the next black swan, which may not be a pandemic, maybe another technology outbreak, maybe it's something else that can change our world on us. But the key is, are you looking out in the distance, or are you always just looking at your feet? And I would say we're looking close at the close shore. Yeah, that's human nature, but you got to look up more often. All right, let's take some more questions.
Question from Augusta. I have an interest in the cashierless retail space and to license the Amazon Just Walk Out technology, but I can't get anyone to contact me from Amazon to find out how. Do you have any tips or direct contacts?
I do have direct contacts with Amazon, and I've worked with their cloud service and so on, but they're at a very, very high level. So in other words, I would have to go to them with the right kind of request. And so I wouldn't fit the level of person because we're talking about a very senior. However, let me give you some ideas. First of all, there are Amazon bookstores, physical bookstores. Again, that's an opposite, isn't it? They started out virtual, and what do? The opposite. That works better too. It's virtual and physical. And they also have purchased Whole Foods. But the key is they have people there that have contacts with the mothership. So instead of trying to go to the mothership directly, and right now they are dealing with getting the essential goods out and hiring like crazy. Boy, the number of people they're hiring is unbelievable. What I would suggest is go another route, find another route. There's also a way to get there. So I would try an Amazon bookstore. You don't have to go to them, but you can get the phone number. They leave messages. If they're not open, probably aren't. But Whole Foods is open. That's owned by Amazon. You could probably talk to the general manager and get a connection. They're starting to use that technology already. You see what I mean? There's always a way to get there. Let me see if I wrote that down here. I had a great statistic. I don't think I did. No, I don't have it off the top of my head. It was just a statistic of how many people that Amazon is hiring and how many people they already employ. It's staggering just here in the United States as well as globally. All right, next question.
Question from David DeLong. Thinking about opposites is a great approach for dealing with the uncertainties created by this crisis. But what are some pitfalls to avoid when thinking about opposite opportunities?
Yes, you want to manage risk. And one of the things that I think the hard trend, soft trend methodology has to it is it's a way to measure risk, because strategy based on uncertainty has high risk. Strategy based on certainty has low risk. And again, you can find certainty by really getting good at defining the hard trends and knowing the categories. I mean, that is why I've developed my systems. And again, they're being used by the Pentagon, they're being used by big companies, small companies, it works. And you don't have to buy something from me to do that. I do have articles that I write, I've got blogs that I write. Yeah, I publish an article a week on LinkedIn and other platforms, so you can find me out there if you want to go that route. My point is, getting good at that can really help you to answer that question, and therefore mitigate the risk of the opposite. Because once you've defined the opposite, then all right, what are the hard trends and the certainties associated with that opposite and the related opportunities, and then get that filtered down to that list of must-dos. Get rid of the should-dos and the could-dos and get down to what the must-dos. I want to take, we're getting to the top of the hour and I'm going to go a little longer, but I don't want to neglect Charlie. And I know there's some questions for Charlie, and I know he's still here. Is there a question for Charlie you could give us, and we'll let him answer a couple?
Absolutely.
Now, Charlie, let's get your video back on again too, please. There you are. All right, question for Charlie, go ahead.
Okay, Charlie, as you went through life, did you ever revisit your 20-year plan and compare it? And if so, did you shift and change your path forward? That question is from Ross.
Oh boy, I love that one. Go ahead.
Oh, that's a very good question. As a matter of fact, I planned that next 20 years 3 different ways because I had so much time. One was an aggressive way, where I'd stay in the military and try to command an aircraft carrier, which eventually I did anyway. I was reserve commander of the aircraft carrier Coral Sea. And then the third stage was saying, I'm going to get out, I'm going to buy a big sailboat, and I'm going to sail around the world. Okay. So now all of these were designed around my wife, the gal that I had married when I was, after I graduated from the Naval Academy. When I came home, she had filed for divorce 3 months before I was repatriated. Okay. So all of those dreams, all three of those directions and plans kind of went in the trash can. So the lesson learned there is, hey, it's really important to have a plan, okay? But don't expect, the world to necessarily follow along and be available for the plan that you have made. And so answer is, yes, I continued part of the plan, but oh, by the way, I had to alter that plan severely.
Just a quick comment on that. One of the things I like to say is that, of course, failing to plan is planning to fail. You got to have a plan, but even more important than the plan is to make sure you build change into the plan. There's a very quick story that I remember when I turned 30, I was in Glacier National Park, and I decided to climb a mountain with a couple of buddies. And we could see the top. That was the goal. That was the plan. And we could look and see the way to get up there. So we started going up. And as I got halfway up, all of a sudden I could see I couldn't see really the top of the mountain from the bottom. I had to get halfway up before I could see the real top, whereas that's where I really wanted to go. In other words, I had to change my plan, but I wouldn't have got up there at all had I not set the first goal. And the power of your future view in that cell, even though that didn't end up happening, mentally, it helped you get out of that cell. And by the way, I know as a fact, you developed some new plans and made them happen. How about another one for Charlie?
A question from Tom Frank. Charlie, when you were held as a POW, were you able to hear the propaganda? Specifically, how might you have reacted to the Jane Fonda comments that North Vietnam repeated publicly often?
Another interesting question. Yes, we knew Jane Fonda was there. In fact, she came to the camp that I was in. I did not meet her personally, but she was there. Now, I would like to say this. I am a truth seeker, as I know, Dan, you are, and most of you people are. Truth is, Jane Fonda never got anybody killed there, and that's a misconception. It's on the internet. You'll find all kinds of nasty things that she did. She didn't do all those nasty things. We weren't happy to have her there. We thought in some way that we were actually in uniform to defend her right to dissent, because that's what this country is all about. But we didn't think that she should be in a foreign country, exercising that privilege that we all have.
Great. Another question from Andrew Coleman. In the book Good to Great, James Stockdale was quoted as saying, "The optimists died first in the POW camp in Vietnam. In other words, they needed to confront the brutal facts and then manage from that perspective. Did you experience the same aha moment in order to survive?"
Another interesting question. When I read that in Good to Great, I called the author. I was surprised to get a hold of him. He was in Denver. And I said, I don't remember it that way. And he said, well, I had interviewed Stockdale, and that's what he said. So I went to Jim Stockdale and said, and we hashed this out about optimism, because I'm an optimist, and I felt like that was part of my survival, is being optimistic and looking to the future. What we decided was that what he told me that he really meant was the folks that positively think themselves out of reality were the ones that died. That you can be optimistic, but you have to be realistic as well. He said, and he was a great leader in that prison camp. And I think most of us actually think that he saved our lives just because of the teams that he put together. A tough leadership position. But the point was, he would tell us, hey, this hurts. The realism is this POW stuff is not for the faint of heart. And so we're realistic about the pain that we're going through. But oh, by the way, we believe that we will get out of this prison someday, and we will be stronger than when we came in. So so you're right. the optimists, I think, were the guys who didn't make it if they were not realists as well.
Yeah, you know, one of the problems we have when we look to the future with optimism, but we aren't looking at reality that much, is like, we'll get out of this prison camp in a month. And then when a month passes and it doesn't happen, you're shot. Well, maybe I'll get out in another month. And again, but instead of putting an unrealistic time frame on it, by the way, that may be happening with the pandemic, I don't know. But the point I'm getting at is you can get yourself shot down and get all bummed out instead of coming up with something that is broader that you know will happen. I remember our mutual friend, Jerry Coffey, he said, you know, at some point he got to a point where he felt sorry for the guards because he knew someday he'd get out of there and they'd still be there. And I know Jerry was optimistic from day one because I've asked him and he told me that. So I think you're qualifier to that optimism. One last comment on optimism. Somebody over the years, people have said, you must be an optimist. And my response was, yeah, pessimists never do anything. Why? They know it'll fail. Okay. So they've already predetermined it ain't going to work anyway. Okay. Another one. We'll do another one. Charlie, you're such a great resource. We'll do another one, and then we'll maybe take a couple more for me, and then we'll have to bring close to this. Okay, go ahead.
Sounds good. Question from Glenn. What did POWs do to cope and think about the future? Colonel Jim Hivner, hopefully I pronounced that correctly, kept the image of his Lutheran church altar and communion in his mind. He and his wife took communion as their first act after they arrived back in the U.S.
Good question, and I know Jim very well, and you're absolutely right. We escape the prison mentally, by thinking of the future, by playing games, and that's one of the things that I did. I had the 8 foot by 8 foot cell that I was in was actually built for 4 guys, and in fact, eventually we had 4 men in that, but we were in bunk beds, and so there were 4 bunks, wooden bunks, no mattress. And so I set up each one of these bunks as a different restaurant that I would eat in. Of course, all I had to eat was rice twice a day, but I would take my rice and I would go to a different bunk because that was a different restaurant of mine. One more thing, Jennifer, if you will send me the questions that I haven't been able to answer, I'll be happy to email those folks as well.
Wow, Charlie, and I know since I've been doing that, that's not a small task and it's time consuming, but I really appreciate you doing that for everyone. I can't help myself. I got to get one more for Charlie before he goes. Let's get one more in there.
I actually moved them all into a separate queue that I can't access.
Okay, you already put them into a different
sorry,
place. All right,
yeah.
Charlie. Hey, thanks again for doing this for us. And if you'll turn off the video and mute button, and I can't wait to hear you speak again because you're an amazing speaker. So I'm looking forward to that. And, all right, take care. All right, I'll take a couple more questions for me, and then I'm going to we'll end this one. But remember, it's not a time to be sitting back and relaxing. This is a time to really take stock and look at how could I make things significantly better, and look at my processes, even your core competencies. What are your personal competencies that have gotten you from the past to the present? And are they good enough to get you all the way to the future, out far, or do you need a new competency? There's an old saying, you can't teach an old dog new tricks. And one of the things I love is, hey, we're not dogs. The only thing that can keep us from learning is our own, again, what's happening in here, what Charlie talked about. So let's get rid of those barriers and realize that learning new things at any age can be done. All right, let's take another couple of questions.
Yep, question from Mary Keelik. With all of the automation, do you feel we could become more disconnected with people? For example, more texting than calling?
Yeah, I think that, and I know one of the problems we've got with young people, if you're older, just like if you're young, you got problems with the older, and if you're older, you got problems with the young, because we both communicate in different ways. But what we're trying to do is to connect. And I think we can learn, what we need to do with our generations is kind of learn from each other. And I think that time passes. In other words, young people that would maybe rather text and communicate that way, which is maybe foreign to older people who would rather get on a phone call or just come over and see you. It is, again, there's a little bit of a clash there, but we can both learn from each other. I've got a good friend of mine that is always last to get technology. He was the last to get, a answering machine. He was the last to get just about everything. But hey, he's texting. He's on Facebook. I mean, it took him a while to get there. I think the rest of the world was there before he did, but he's there. Why? Because his grandkids are there. There's a motivation. His kids are there. And turns out he wants to be there with them. And he's doing it. At the same point, I know that the kids and the family have learned that when you're together physically and you actually have a conversation and we tell stories together, there are things that are felt and emotions that are shared that go beyond what you can feel in a text. So those young people, guess what's going to happen? They're going to get a little older. Every year they're going to get older. And as they get older, they'll have different needs, and they will have different socialization needs, and they will expand their horizon. Just like my older friend who's expanding his horizon by learning how to text and do social media. Let's do another one.
Okay, question from David Hebler. Insurance comes up a lot as barriers for business. Either coverage denied, they will not cover you, or rates keep skyrocketing. It seems that insurance is delivered quite inefficiently. Where do you think the insurance industry is headed?
Well, I think this pause button, some people said the world is on pause. No, I think the world is on reset. I think we're heading to reset, but it's not going to reset to the old. I think that there's going to be enough problems that are created around this, both for health insurance, as well as life insurance, as well as business interruption insurance. I mean, you name it. There's enough problems around that, and the cracks are all starting to become visible. The cracks in the system are all becoming very visible, that there's an opportunity to do a lot of reinvention. And the companies that try to hunker down and just stick with the past, and we're not going to pay these things, and we're just going to hang in there. And hunkering down is not going to help you to become significant to your potential customers as well as your current customers on the other side. Remember how I started this out? The pandemic, when it ends, certainty it will end. When it ends, how will you be remembered? And you don't want that to be negative. So some will be, and you may not be staying with them. I've seen some commercials where car insurance companies got on and said, you're not driving as much, so we're giving you an automatic rebate. Good. Hey, that's the kind of thing that we want to be seeing. I may like that. See, it's emotional, and us humans are emotional. So I think this is a reset button for every industry, whether it's shipping, receiving, restaurants, you name it, design, architecture, everything. It gives us the chance to say, what could have been better? What could be elevated? What is more significant? What could we do that would create better customer service, a better customer experience? What would create even more satisfied? How could we have less calls in the call center because people are not having things to have to call us about because they work in the first place? How could we pre-solve some of those future problems? I think this is a giant opportunity. Now look, get me right on this. Let me make sure you hear me well. There are people that are dying. There are family members that have passed away. There are people that are suffering physically from this virus, and I'm not putting that down at all. This is a bad thing, and it's hurting a lot of people, causing a lot of bad things to take place. So I'm not really putting that down at all. As a matter of fact, all I do every day is I'm in gratitude that I woke up and I'm breathing and healthy, and the people I know are breathing and healthy, and I also am thinking about all of you more than you all even realize, and wanting you all to be healthy and breathing and doing more, because I know we all can do more. So let's remember to use this moment, though, this tragedy. There's also the opposite, the opportunity. And that's what I've been focusing on, is not diminishing the tragedy, but expanding. By the way, our hospitals will be forever changed. Our elementary schools will be forever changed. Whether it's positively changed or not, well, that's up to us. Hope is not a strategy. I love hope, but I want to make it happen. Do we want a more human future, a more enlightened future, a more connected world instead of disconnected world? Do we want a more loving future? My answer to that is, well, then you better get busy and start making it happen. And how does it start? Hey, it starts with you. It starts with me. And maybe you don't have a global platform, but you know what? You've got somebody you can talk to or pick up the phone. You've got your family. You've got your friends. You've got your sphere of influence, which is actually bigger than you realize. And remember, as all kids know, it's not what you say, it's what you do. Because they're like little magnets. They listen to what you say, but they even more pay attention to your actions. And your actions do speak louder than words. You're creating a story, even when you do nothing. A picture creates a story. Your face creates a story. What story are you creating? I hope to see you next week, next Friday, when I'm talking about certainty and how aligning your future view is so important in a world of increasing uncertainty. Remember, go to burrus.com/hope this time, and you'll find some resources as well as a place to register. All right, so until then, stay healthy and look at how you can reach out and touch someone in a significant way, and look at what you can do to perhaps elevate your significance in the world. All right, thank you.